talking about SNL, the history, the mysteries, and all the hot impressions in between, breaking down all the numbers as well. In your favorite sketches with special guests, it's all on the Saturday Night Network.
Yes, that is right. Welcome everybody on into the Saturday Night Network for another edition of our Hot Take Show, coming to you live right after the Paul Mescal and Shaboozey episode of Saturday Night Live, Season 50, Episode 8. My name is Jon Schneider from the SNN. So excited to be back with you for the first show of this December run, the final run of 2024, closing out the first half of Season 50. And of course, we are here as a presentation of LateNighter.com and with an incredible crew to break this one down. So first up, let me bring in my man, Bill Kenney is here. Bill, how are you?
John, I'm feeling extra special. Had to make a wardrobe change when I saw that cold open drop. Like, oh my goodness, Santa is listening to my wish list. This is all I wanted for Christmas from SNL. I got it. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. What a fun way to start off the season. So we will get into it in a few minutes. And joining us as well as the incredible Rachel Chang is here. Rachel, how are you?
Great to see you all. I'm very impressed with Bill's quick change and ability to pull that out right away. And I'm excited to dive into this episode, still processing it. So excited to process it out loud.
Yeah, that's the fun of these shows, is that we get to talk about them right after they air. So we'll go through all of the sketches and get our thoughts on the nights. And I'm looking forward to seeing what our chat thought of this episode right now. So before we get there, before we talk about all of the moments from this evening, let me get from both of you your hot takes or headlines from the night. So Bill Kenney, how are you feeling about this episode?
A lot better than I thought I would be going into this. Call it the Elordi effect, if you will. I'm very trepidatious of any hot, unknown actor coming in and hosting the show. Probably the most trepidation I get about any kind of host coming in, musical guests or actors or even politicians. You just don't know what you're going to get. Are you going to get, as I've said before, like the early Baldwin or the John Hamm? Are you going to get the Elordi? And I think we're somewhere in the middle here. So I'm pretty happy with going in with very low expectations for tonight.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I don't think he was Paul Mescal was the the John Hamm type where he takes over an episode and then truly, stamps it. But I definitely would not put this anywhere near the Elordi category. I thought he was really, really strong tonight. They knew how to use the hot Irish guy very well. Rachel, how are you feeling about the show tonight?
It's interesting you compared it to Elordi, because I oddly like that episode more than everyone else. But and I had high expectations for this, even though I know nothing about Paul. I just thought a new guy who seems willing to go in on comedy, has a musical background, was excited for what they would do with that. I thought it was kind of middle of the road. I feel like the sketches were, I thought the pre-tapes were really great. I think the pre-tapes were the highlights, and the sketches were kind of, I don't know, we'll see. As we talked through it, I kind of think they were a little forgettable, but fine. And of course, I think that the headline obviously is Church Lady.
Well, no doubt. And we're going to talk about that in a second. I think that there was an infectious energy in the house tonight, and it felt really good. I'm always a little trepidatious about these specific episodes of Saturday Night Live. The ones where you have a host who's a question mark. We know what we're going to get a little bit next week with Chris Rock and then Marty Short coming in for the Christmas show. So this is the one that everyone's sort of overlooking. There was also the Museum of Natural History Gala that took place earlier this week. And we've noticed a trend over the last few years. When that happens, it might have a little bit of an effect on the overall quality of the show that precedes it. So I was thinking about that this week, and I didn't see that at all. I thought that the show was really strong. I felt like everybody came back in really excited, and truly, after doing 7 episodes in 8 weeks, they needed this refresh to come on in for this December run. So I'm feeling really strong and excited for what we got here tonight. And let's start with the thing we all want to be talking about, and that is the return of the church lady. So this is, of course, Dana Carvey's very famous character that he brought onto Saturday Night Live back when he became a cast member in season 12, all the way back in season 12. And we last saw the church lady on a Weekend Update in season 42. But the last time we saw a church chat with the iconic Phil Hartman voiceover and going in and seeing the set with a stained glass window and all of that was the last time was in season 41. So it's been 9 years. Dana being in the building for this entire fall, playing Biden and doing other things, we kept asking, okay, are we going to get some of the staples that made Dana such an amazing cast member? Or are we waiting for him to come and host to do that? And ultimately, we get our answer here, which is the cold open of season 50, episode 8, is the return of Church Chat. So, Bill, how are you feeling about it?
Yeah, I mean, this is my my favorite. One of my favorite cast members of all time, one of my favorite characters of all time, probably the first one I went into school and started quoting with my friends when I started watching all the way back in season 12, as you say, John. And this makes the most sense. I mean, when we get alumni come back to the show, we want them to play all these different characters and things like that. Sometimes they don't really fit the narrative of what's going on in the world. Church Chat makes a lot of sense right now with all of the strife and the things that are going on in the country and in the world. To be able to bring back this character makes all the sense in the world. Now, do the guests make as much sense that he had on tonight? Probably not, but I don't care. This was everything I hoped it would be. I got to see my guy do my favorite. So I'm very happy with what we got.
So let's tell you all who we saw here on Church Chat tonight. And we started off with Sarah Sherman as Matt Gaetz. And then in comes David Spade, who we have not seen on the show really since the mid 2000s when he last hosted. He's hosted the show twice since he was a cast member. Obviously, at the anniversary special, we saw him do Bye-Bye, but really we haven't seen him on a canonical episode of SNL in a very long time, 20 years pretty much. So it was great to get to see David Spade there playing Hunter Biden. And of course, knowing, there are some outside influences on the show lately. We've seen it with The Lonely Island and their podcast and then them coming back. Well, here we get some fly on the wall where we get David Spade and Dana Carvey reuniting on screen together, doing the church lady with Spade's Hunter Biden. We also get Marcelo Hernandez as Juan Soto, who is currently deciding where he is going to play baseball next year. And then appearances by Emil Joachim, Heidi Gardner, James Austin Johnson, and Jane Wickline as the background singers doing the Superior Dance. So, Rachel, was this exciting for you to get a church chat on the show this week?
Even though I came into my SNL fandom later on, and so I was a casual viewer during the church lady days or aware of all the lines. So I was at first I was like, is this the wrong episode? Was I on the 10:30 episode? I thought my DVR had a little, like maybe it was a rerun from a throwback. So it's exciting to see it done in the traditional way. I thought the guests were a mix of people, but I guess it was a good way to get the news of the week in. I'm always excited to see Marcelo play more characters and kind of dive into that deeper. It was wonderful to see David Spade. And like you said, I think it's funny how much podcasts are having an influence on this episode even later on, just in the outside world. And I felt like this was one of the sharper written sketches of the night, just like the Jesus was a carpenter, Sabrina Carpenter references. There are a lot of little, I feel like the rest of the sketches didn't have that as much tonight. This one did. So I felt like this was definitely, conceptually and just writing wise was probably the highlight.
I agree. I thought that this was so much fun. I'm so happy that they decided to do this. I think that, I was really feeling like they were going to do it at some point because it just made sense. Now, what I thought they would do is do some sort of Diddy thing. And that's what, led me to feel like the church chat was going to be coming in at some point in the fall. We never ended up getting that. But with Sarah as Matt Gaetz, it sort of fulfills some of the guests that we've seen in previous eras. Sort sort of like your weirdo politicians that would come on this show. And I just feel like David Spade, first of all, he looked incredible tonight. Just got to give big props to Spade. He looked absolutely dashing on the show as Hunter Biden, and they did the makeup really well, and he looked great, and it was so good getting him out there and refreshing. I mean, as much as we've seen, as exciting as it is to get Dana Carvey back on the show, we have seen him so many weeks, and some other cameos that we've seen are more recent cast members like Kyle Mooney and Pete Davidson and of course Andy Samberg. Now, David Spade was somebody who, though they may have hinted on their podcast that he may come on at a certain point, this to me was a little unexpected. So, Bill, for you, what were your thoughts about getting Spade on Church Chat?
Yeah, I thought that it would happen. And others have said this, that we think that Dana's going to host sometime this year, just based on the fact that he's going to join the Five Timers Club if he does. And I think
he's not now, by the way.
Oh, really? Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt, but I just don't think that they would have done this week if he was going to host this year.
Okay. All right. Interesting. But I think that a lot of us thought that David would be saved for that. So maybe that goes to your point where he's not, maybe he won't be hosting. This was the way to get both of them together, because it makes sense with them doing this podcast for so long, that he would be on. I was excited to see him. He was very understated as far as, the Spade that we used to know, that was a little more manic and a little crazy. Obviously he's older and things like that, but and he's playing a character that's a little understated despite his legal troubles. So I think he played it really well. He did look great, and it was great to see him come on and do this.
Yeah, I was thrilled for it. And again, just fulfills everything you would look for in season 50, where it's not like the alumni of the show are taking over season 50. We still get the show to feel like it's a show from 2024 and 2025, but once a week we are getting something that is a throwback to a previous era, and that is so exciting and fulfilling for all the fans of the show. So to me, this is exactly the way I would have scripted it out if I was doing some pre-production on season 50, which was give me the anniversary show with all the pomp and circumstances in February, but during the season, just give me one thing a week that makes people, excited about the fact that they've taken the time to either live through or go back to those previous eras and watch the show. And I'm sure for generations of SNL fans tonight, they were very excited to get this on. And you know what? Like, look, is Dana in prime church lady form? No, probably not. But still, this was absolutely incredible to have on the show tonight. And I thought it was a great way to kick things off this evening. So excited that we ended up getting it. All right, let's move over to the monologue, where we're going to see Paul Mescal come out for the first time, talks about loving SNL, coming from Ireland, and how he's not known for comedy, more for clips of him crying. And we get to see him in multiple different movies, just being the man crying. Also is going to clear up some misconceptions about the Irish, and then put on a show that he's wearing some short shorts, and Marcelo is going to come out at the end as well. Rachel, how did you feel about Paul's monologue?
I thought he did a really good job at hitting comedy, considering it was all about him not doing comedy. And it was also a great intro to him for those of us who don't know all that much about him, by pulling together the best of his performances in the form of the crying scenes. And even though I was like, as soon as Marcelo stepped out, I was like, oh, right, he's that guy with the short shorts. So, like, that was in my peripheral pop culture knowledge, but I didn't quite realize it was him. So I thought they pulled out how he's a celebrity, his movie career, and then the fact he's Irish in a really clever way. And I thought it was like three great points to kind of pull together to show this is who we're getting tonight.
Bill, what do you think of the monologue?
It was okay. I think, I do like that we've gone back to, reverence for the show, kind of appreciating the fact that, these hosts often come in and they have been fans of the show, but it was a little all over the place. First thing I thought when I saw Marcelo is like, we're really leaning into he's the it guy on the show now. I mean, they've been doing that all season and building up to it. We saw it at least 2 or 3 times tonight, but just hearing the woo girls out in the audience when he comes out in the short shorts was pretty funny to me. And well-deserved. I mean, he's very good at what he does, on top of being a good-looking young man. So, like, I liked it. It wasn't a lot going on here, and but they got in and out, and it wasn't too bad.
Yeah, I agree. I think Paul came off really presentable. Seems like a really nice guy and was very excited to be there. And I do want to know, like, don't fake it if you're not. But if you are an SNL fan and you grew up watching it, definitely tell the audience, because they're going to buy into whatever you're going to do next, knowing that you understand the process and that you've watched the show. And, for someone coming from Ireland, and I'm sure he's lived in the States or other places for many years, but just someone who comes from a different country that may not air SNL live, there's already a little bit of a question mark about like how much do you understand about SNL and how it works and stuff if you are a big fan of the show. And then to get to see him talk about his love for the show at the beginning, I thought was really great. Other ideas were okay, but yes, totally agree. Marcelo, being the one to be facing the camera, facing the audience, it is really truly showing him and his mark on the show and how he's slowly starting to take over as the face of SNL. And, we're still, right in the middle of season 50, but as we start to look ahead a little bit into what the future of the show will look like after this anniversary season, I think Marcelo is going to be a big part of it. So that, this is another point of evidence to talk about that as we head towards the end of the season. Let's dive into our first sketch of the night. So we're going to sit down at dinner where Heidi and Emil are going to be playing parents of Paul, who is the son. And they're talking about him, coming home from school and he's wearing a hat at the table. So why don't you take off your hat? And he has an earring that he's wearing. And the scene devolves into, well, what's the big deal? And gets into Heidi and Emil not understanding that the earring is not really supposed to be a big deal, but it could just be him becoming this total rebel that's going to be doing some lighting things up and choosing. He eventually says that he chose a major, art history, and he's become an edgelord. And they go absolutely crazy. We get appearances from Ashley Padilla as Nana, who's being constantly thrown out the window by Heidi, as well as Michael Longfellow coming in as the button on the end, being the little brother who is all gothed up. So, Bill, how do you feel about our dinner scene that we got in the first sketch of the night?
I had to set aside the fact that it's such a ridiculous concept to think in 2024 somebody wearing an earring would make anyone mad. Like this is going 40, 50 years in the past that somebody would think an earring was gay if you wore it. But after you get past that, this is when Heidi's at her absolute best, when she is the manic, crazy person in the sketch who's just going crazy. And to see her paired with Emil in this situation and them bouncing off of each other with the different ideas, peeing on the floor at the office, going to work naked, skeleton hands tattooed around my neck. There was enough escalation that went all the way through this, leading up to, as you said, Ashley getting thrown out the window multiple times. I really, really like this. This was a great way to start the night after the monologue.
Rachel, what do you think of it?
I thought it was simple but ridiculous. Like Bill said, I think this is where Heidi really shines. It was nice to see Emil step into that role as the husband and to see them paired together and to see him be able to hold himself up against Heidi. I thought he did a really great job in that, it kind of becoming not just the background of a scene in those family sketches, as you would call them, I guess. I agree that the earring was a kind of a weird place to start, but the escalation to the major was just so relatable to me because I went through that. So I think that kind of just, I don't know. It's all very mundane, but the ridiculousness in the mundane is what makes this so brilliant. And just the little things that they threw in there, like your father's been gay for 15 years, like little tidbits in there. And even when Michael Longfellow walked in, looking really great goth, actually, and said, "I smell chicken," it was just like, I thought that was a great little button.
Yeah, this definitely reminded me of a sketch like with Will Ferrell and Amy Poehler, like the whole like pop sketch, like the idea that the kids are like, getting into the MTV and the rap music and all that stuff and like not understanding the generational thing that's happening here. And I love sketches like this. This is something that this era of the show has gone away from, which is a sketch with just a few cast members, sitting around. There's a family dynamic, and you're trying to understand what the relationship is between all of these cast members in just a few minutes. And I love this sketch. I think it was so great because right away you establish that, you're trying to figure out what POV you're supposed to look at the sketch from, right? Is it the point where the parents are looking down on the kid, the son, or is it the son thinking about how ridiculous is it that his parents would find the earrings silly or stupid or rebellious? And I think it's a little bit of both here, because no matter like who you are, you could sort of see things from both sides, where the earring is sort of it's almost like it represents what parents get nervous about their kids doing when they go off to college. So for me, I thought that the dynamic here was really well set up. And then the performances were really great. Number one, I think Heidi is just so good at devolving into crazy. Just going from like very calm mother to then, being the woman who's going to go into the kitchen and grab a spatula and put it in her earlobe, throwing Nana out the window. Like, I think she did that role so well, putting Emil in a position to really succeed on the show. And he's been so impressive this first half of the season. He's really showing that he's going to be a big part of future SNL with his role as the father and playing off Heidi. And then Ashley doing the physical performances, I thought was really great here. And all I was saying throughout this sketch, as they kept, talking to their son and just saying crazy things, was like, don't ruin it with something crazy at the end. And I thought that what they did with Michael Longfellow was great, to have him come in to be like fully dressed the way he was and then not really say anything about it. If they had gone into a whole thing about it, that's where I think that this would have turned in a bad direction. But for me, I thought this was a great way to end this sketch, and I thought it was perfect placement. You don't always need the big showy sketch at the beginning of the night. Like, this is the type of sketch that shows people like, hey, SNL can be this kind of thing too. So I love this piece. Thought it was great to start off the night.
Yeah, and I think we haven't talked about this a lot this season, but I think maybe they're listening to us just a little bit with getting rid of the buttons, not having it end with "this was sponsored by Uber Eats" or some nonsense like that. Like, just as you said, John, like just letting it breathe, getting to the point where it made sense. We had Longfellow coming through the door, perfect ending, and really great sketch.
Yeah, look, and you have to, like, when they succeed at ending a sketch well, you absolutely should point it out as a fan of the show, because it is the hardest thing for them to do. So I thought that what they did was great here, and Michael was awesome in that role as well at the end of the night. The I Smell Chicken was great. Okay, next up, we got Gladiator II, the musical. So obviously referencing two of the major movies that are out right now that everyone's talking about, Gladiator II and Wicked, where, since Wicked has been so successful, why don't we turn Gladiator 2 into a musical? And we get Keenan and Devin and Bowen and Paul all singing No Place Like Rome. We lead eventually into Jane Wickline singing and then cutting to her being dead. Michael Longfellow introducing Mikey Day as the Emperor, doing a Lin-Manuel Miranda rap, and James Austin Johnson as well as comic relief. But as far as the actual beats of the sketch, hard to describe on a podcast. This is really something that you gotta watch. But Rachel, how did you feel about it, given how tapped in you are to pop culture?
This was my highlight of the night. I mean, I'm a huge musical fan. I haven't seen either movie for other reasons. But I just thought they had the No Place Like Rome, just starting there was such a great setup. And the fact, I believe if I counted right, there were 5 songs that were hit on, and they hit on every type of musical song, right? They had the big ballad, they had the dramatic song, they had a rap, they had a lighthearted ditty, they had like the big note at the end. They really wrote a whole music, like just the composition for this was really well done. And they wrote a whole musical in a however many minute sketch this or pre-tape this was. I love seeing Jane Wickline. I'm so intrigued by her, and I'm so just kind of curious how she's going to fit into this cast. I mean, objectively speaking, I'm not her demographic. She's not my demographic, but I'm just really intrigued by her. And I loved seeing her have that solo moment in such a big production, a sketch that was such a big production. The Gladiator song at the beginning, it reminded me a lot of from the Mulan. I'll Make a Man Out of You, I feel like it's weirdly a cult favorite hit, and it kind of had that feel to it. And I could just like, it just had that vibe with the and but I mean, again, Longfellow is just killing it with his expressions. I just thought his little little things he did were so perfect here. I was blushing after the first one. I actually rewound during the commercial break and watched this again right away because I was like, that was so much. I couldn't absorb it. I still can't absorb it right now because there was just so much going on. The Hamilton, the rap, I mean, JJ just like so perfect for that. And ending it with Mescal singing the famous Wicked notes was just like that, again, a great button. But then they had the button on the button with the tusicle, which was good. It was okay, but it was almost like, I don't know if we did both beats.
Bill, what do you think?
Yeah, this was okay. Looking back on the whole of the episode, another light night for Keenan and another light night for Mikey, and this is really their shining moments in this episode. Jane, as Rachel says, is fantastic. Maybe the best we've seen from her. I mean, she had that great Weekend Update piece a few weeks ago, but getting to see her just kind of have a solo there, and that was the funniest moment in the sketch. Even though you kind of knew what was going to happen as they're coming up the hill with the torches, just the immediate impact of the bloodshed was really, really funny. Yeah, I mean, this was okay. It's certainly, I'm not interested really in either one of these movies, but I like what they did with this here.
Agreed. I'm not the demo for this. Like, I'm not a big musical person, but I definitely appreciate what they were going for here. And, the concern for me is that it gets too campy once you start to turn this Gladiator II movie into a musical, but I don't think they did that here. I think it teetered the line of this being really fun for people who love musicals and also great for people who make fun of musicals. And that's why I like this sketch, because it was like it hit all the beats of like, if you weren't familiar with the intricacies that Rachel is describing with the songs, you could make fun and understand the tropes by just having basic knowledge of that. And like, that is why this sketch works. And some of the ones to me in Charlie XCX's episode didn't work because like the dummy level knowledge for some of the sketches like just didn't hit, but this one really did. So I haven't seen Gladiator 2 and I haven't seen Wicked, but I was able to fully grasp what they were going for here, and I love that. And for me, this was a really solid pre-tape here, and for sure, like a good idea to do this. It's going to get a ton of buzz online. Let's move over to Caponelli's Italian commercial, where we get Paul and Ashley playing two actors. Paul's playing a character named Craig. We get introduced to Mikey Day as Jake, the director, Devin as his clapper guy. And, they're about to do a scene where they are filming a commercial talking about all the different types of pastas. And imagine the possibilities comes out of Ashley's mouth, says it was a slip, an accident, some improv. And this really, really upsets Paul's character, who is supposed to be a serious actor, doesn't understand why Ashley, who's a newbie, can start improving. There's a lot of back and forth here. It culminates in Kenan Thompson coming out as Mr. Mario Caponelli, who ends up loving Paul's suggestions at the end and follows them. So, Bill, what do you think about the Italian commercial?
Well, at some point, we're going to have to put the statistics together to see who's played more directors, Sudeikis, Beck Bennett, or Mikey Day. Like, we've really, it's a horse race. But yeah, I mean, this was great. Ashley is quickly becoming one of my new favorites. I just love her performances. It's another great performance by her. I like that it's almost kind of a subtle dig to Paul being a method actor. And, having him play a character who's a method actor for a, pasta commercial. It was pretty funny. It didn't go very far past the original idea, but it was still pretty good. And I do like Paul taking the digs at her and then trying to find his own lane and saying, what was it, spaghetti or not, we're going to kill you. So that was a pretty good turn, but not a lot of escalation here, but mostly worked for me as based on Ashley for sure.
Rachel, how do you feel about this one?
I thought this was fine. I mean, I know the behind the scenes of commercial sketches are so a part of SNL, but I also feel like they're not always that relatable. And to then, I mean, but the puns were, I think the puns were what made this fun, even, and how stupid the puns were made it fun. Like, we all know a restaurant called Pasta, we had Possibilities when I went to Syracuse. So it's like, these are all the most basic puns, right? Nothing was clever. None of us were like, oh my God, I can't believe I haven't heard that one before. But I think it was, and Ashley, I think it's very much getting she has this character down. It's almost like a variation of, we've seen her in this, even though she's only been on for this first half season. I feel like I've seen her do this type of roles. So in a way, it was just very predictable and a bit one note. And I did, like, when Kenan came in, I was like, okay, I see that they're pushing it a little further, but I don't know. I wasn't sold on it.
So I was sold on it. I think that I really love the concept here, and I thought that Ashley was really good. Her playing like sort of doe-eyed and not understanding about why Paul's character would get upset worked for me. I thought that Paul played one of my favorite types of characters in SNL history, which is the like really deep insecure person that just like lets it out pretty like slowly. So to me, like, everything was really well done here, and the concept itself was great because I kept seeing, as the sketch would go on, Paul getting just more and more frustrated and upset, and I felt like it was going down the path of him like just breaking out into madness, which I think would have been the way to go here. I absolutely hated where they ended up with this sketch. I hated that Kenan Thompson came in at the end, who I love Kenan, and I think that he adds a lot, as, you know, he can come in and give you that like last minute layup on a sketch that really kills. This was not it for me. It's for him to then, like, it almost felt like he reversed the sketch by then saying that we're going to let the person who is the weird one in the sketch, he's the actual right one in it. Like it's like, you know what I'm saying, Bill? Like, it basically, like, I felt like all the things they were working up towards, he broke.
Yeah, it was completely unnecessary to have him come in. It was like, and they've done this before. I can't think of any off the top of mind, but where, you know, I'm the owner of this place. Of course, I understand what's happening here with all the craziness. It didn't need that at all. It was going fine just the way it was. So I completely agree that Kenan, in a rare instance, was unnecessary here.
Yeah, and I love puns. Like, if anybody's listened to this podcast for 4.5 years, they know I love puns. So this hit, like, I was so excited about this sketch and the way that it was headed, and it just like made that last turn at the end. And I feel like the car crashed with Kenan coming into this one, unfortunately. But otherwise, there was a really good like 3/4 of this where it was fully preposterous. Okay, let's talk about. Let's talk about PDD. Paul is daddy. So Please Don't Destroy Boys are back. We get into the office where they're hanging out with Paul, talking to him about what they want to write for the week. And, Marty says, talks about his girlfriend loving Paul, and we get some fun jokes there. And Jon says, like, we really love you. And just awkward silence for a few seconds. I love you guys too. I think I'm in love with you. And starts rubbing Jon's thighs. Maybe we should move in together upstate. Starts getting a little sexy. And then we switch over. We get to see what life would be like if they took on Paul as their daddy. And we see the four of them in this perfect little cabin protecting. Paul's protecting the PDD boys, cherishing them, reading to them. And, this like fun scene. And then this like crazy turn where the townspeople have found out about this relationship and the local militia doesn't understand them and comes, and Paul ends up killing them all. And, and it devolves to the point where it's truly madness. And then we revert back to the office at the end. Jane Wickline comes in and sees Paul kissing them goodnight, and we end the sketch. So, Rachel, what do you think of this one?
I am as big of a Please Don't Destroy fan as I am a Broadway fan. So I was very excited to see it start in the office. I like them confined to their office, but I also like when they go like the one where Ben finds out that the other two are a couple, like that, when they go a little out of bounds, but not as far as a plane. Was not a fan of the plane, but it started almost kind of slow for a PDD sketch. I was kind of like, am I not getting it, or is this part of the awkwardness, which I think it was very intentional. It was like, okay, where is this headed? But it wasn't that quick PDD the enter we always get at first. And so I think to then build up, it was almost like it went like this and it climaxed so quickly at the end. I thought the pace was really fascinating. That it escalated. It's like it went to the home life and then it went to the townspeople. Like that just went so quickly that the pace was almost like, oh my God. I clearly am going to be watching this a lot to kind of absorb all the intricacies, but I was kind of like, what just happened at the end? And then Jane felt like a good, like, okay, grounding element again. The highlight was definitely seeing them when they were playing all the childhood games, the building the fort and putting that, I don't even know what you call it when you lift the kid up in the air. I thought those were like the most basic things, and seeing these grown men do it was just hilarious in their pajamas. I don't know why Martin in pajamas just looks so innocent and helpless, and just love seeing him in pajamas like that. So I mean, I think I need to watch it a few more times, but I think this will grow on me.
This was a really fascinating one to break down, and I love that you mentioned the pacing here, because for years we were talking about, PDD sketches. The pacing on them is so different than everything else we see in the show because they're all quick cuts. And this one to me was like you said, like really jarring in terms of this going from a really slow, like almost romantic scene to the crazy fast pace, what was happening with the militia and everything. Like there was a lot of tone shifting happening in this one. Did it work for you though, Bill?
Yeah, it worked for me. And technically they didn't leave the office, right? Because that was all part of the dream sequence. So they were in the office the whole time. I'm with you, Rachel. That's where I want them most of the time as well. Yeah, this worked for me on most levels. I do like that it did start when they get into the dream sequence that they thought, what does he want to be, our dad? And, no, I want to be your daddy. And just kind of cutting to that. I love Martin talking about his girlfriend and wanting to be between Paul's thighs, and him like almost breaking down twice because of it. And clearly this has been a hot button issue for him, and the guys know it. Yeah, this was pretty good in tying it up with that he had taught them how to use the bow and arrow, and that's how they end up saving each other. So this was pretty good. We've been really craving PDD this year. We've had a lot of weeks without them, and then they got cut for time. So this was happy. I was happy to have them back, and I think this was a pretty good PDD.
Yeah, I agree. I thought that this was, if you're going to do the whole, Paul is the hot guy thing, I think that this was the way to go about it, where it's not like they're just thirsting on him this whole time. And that's the premise of it, that it's like sort of like a version of thirsting. I think it is a, development of, okay, like this love scene that is all of a sudden brewing between these guys at the office. And, it's also interesting that you said, Bill, that this is a dream sequence, because even though I understood that watching the sketch, it doesn't, there's no like noise or graphic that sort of shows that they're dreaming throughout this. It's sort of almost like it cuts as if that this is actually happening. And of course we get them sleeping on the couch. Totally realize that at the end of the sketch. But I do think that that is an interesting turn on it, or an interesting editing choice, that watching this on first watch, you may not realize that this is supposed to be a dream sequence or a fantasy sequence that's going on here, and that it sort of just could be like PDD shenanigans developing. So I think that's like a really creative editing choice that if we ask the guys, I'd probably say that they made on purpose. But yeah, I'm happy that this aired. I thought it was fun. It's not in my Criterion collection for PDD. But I, given that they got cut from Charlie XCX's episode and that one ended up only online, happy that this one made the show. All right, our final sketch before weekend update is the Pirate Strip Club sketch, where Sarah and Heidi and Ego and Chloe are all attending Heidi's, I believe it's her bachelorette party. She's playing Amy, and they're going to this strip club, but it's a strip club that's very special because we get to sort of see a play where the guys of Treasure Guyland are there to perform and to strip. And we have James and Marcelo, Paul, Bowen, and Andrew all there, very much leaning into their characters instead of taking off their clothing. Mikey Day appears as well as a privateer with a letter from the Queen of England. We get to see Emil Joaquin taking off his pants and having some peg legs. Eventually, Marcelo will take off his shirt, but he has scurvy, of course, so they have to throw him overboard. Heidi will come on stage as well, and they tie her up and throw her off the ship. And then once the girls get fed up and leave, they finally take off their clothes. So, Bill, how do you think that SNL did tonight with this pirate strip club sketch?
Oh, I can't be the only one that was very, very concerned that we were getting a third Domingo in like 5 weeks. But once it was clear that was not what was happening, I love these 4 women together. I think they've really become like this four-headed monster of SNL, being able to be in these roles together. They work so well off of each other. It did take way too long to get going. And there wasn't a lot going on once you figured out they're not taking their clothes off. And so obviously this is what we're doing. I think the standouts are Ego, who just was way into this, way more than she should have been, because she's, a fanatic of piracy. And then Marcelo taking his shirt off and showing his scurvy was really, really funny. But yeah, I mean, this wasn't my favorite of the night, even though we had some really good performances in it.
Rachel, what do you think?
My first big concern is Heidi okay? That looked like quite a throw. That I was like, and then when they showed the behind the scenes on the Instagram, I was like, that still looked like it was quite a throw. So I'm worried about Heidi. But I agree. I think it started so slow that it gave us time. I had the same thought, is this Domingo again? And then I thought, oh, is this another version of the young boys? What was the retro old school dance where they had the parade of boys last year? What was that? Kind of where they had the hot girls versus the
Jake Gyllenhaal one.
Yes. I thought it was kind of like going to be a take on that, which in some ways it was. Let's get all the guys up there again and show off, dance and sing, and show off their bodies in different ways. But I do like these sketches where they get so many people in just to see those little moments where you see their interactions. But I don't know, there wasn't much to this that was that exciting. And I feel like it ended with the kind of fun little full Monty dance. But I don't think this was a standout.
Yeah, definitely wasn't for me either. I think that what was missing here, again, I really like the concept. I just don't like the execution of what they did, because I felt like we were really missing some reality to this sketch, where like we needed an explanation, or at least at the end of the sketch, to explain why these actors are taking their roles so seriously, or if the end result is going to be that the women just didn't wait long enough to finally get to the stripping. There had to be some sort of like tease that it was going to happen more than what we were getting with just Marcelo having scurvy, which for me was the funniest part of the whole thing. But I just feel like they didn't do enough of that. Like, I think if your whole thing is going to be that at the end of this, that it was exactly the way it should have been, they just didn't have the patience for it, then you have to make the sketch about them being impatient and sort of having the guys like, take off the stuff and teasing at the end. And I felt that they got lost in the idea that at the end, it was going to be like, okay, all the guys of SNL are going to take off their shirts and the audience is going to clap. So for me, like, didn't get all the way where I wanted it to. But there was a nugget of a really good idea in here that unfortunately, I don't think we're going to be talking about too much longer for this season. Yes, Bill.
I will say one line that really made me laugh when Longfellow comes on stage with the mop on the head. And are they really going to take turns with the guy with the mop on his head? I don't know why, but it was a throwaway line, but it was really, really funny to me. But yeah, mostly not.
Yeah, I did also laugh at, like, I thought the individual performers of the sketch were actually very good. This was a great example of a sketch where the actors themselves elevated the writing material, because I thought that everyone in this sketch was really good, including Ego, who, you know, didn't have a big night, but I will shout her out where she's talking about her being horny as hell. Like, I think that, you know, some of the lines that they were doing, a meal with the peg legs and all that stuff, really made this like a fun watch. But as far as like a sketch is concerned, there was other things this night that I really feel like clicked way more for me. All right, Shaboozey is in the building. Let's talk about him for a second. So, country artist that just blew up this summer. He performs Good News and A Bar Song, which was the big hit of the summer, gets the studio audience having some fun as well. Yeah, he was a very big deal and somebody who I expected to see on season 50. So, Rachel, were you excited for Shaboozey? How do you feel like he did tonight?
I don't know much about Shaboozey, but when I heard both the songs, I was like, oh, I clearly know both of these. And as I said before, I was really excited that they finally brought diversity into a musical guest for the first time this season and into the musical genres too with country, because we haven't really had a true country artist in a beat, if I recall. So
Yeah.
I thought that was a great mix to have. And I don't know if, I mean, I've assumed this was intentional, but I'm not spoiling because it's after midnight now, but the New York Times games folks in the mini today, or on Saturday, one of the clues was the bar song. So, and I know that they've been playing because so many of the SNL cast members are fans of the show, and they had the whole Bo and Yang. I don't know if you guys saw the connections. They had Bo and Yang's name hidden in one of the puzzles recently. So I do think that the fans of New York Times games did intentionally put Shaboozey's name into the puzzle today or yesterday, whatever time we are at right now, because he was going to be a guest on.
Yeah, I think that, you know, and he's been all over the place recently. I think I saw him perform on Thanksgiving. Must have been the Detroit Lions, Chicago Bears game that he performed at halftime. But yeah, he was there and he's been really blowing up. And to your point, Rachel, that I do think that SNL, which is really fun, they've been getting like one country artist a season on the show. Last year, they had Chris Stapleton on the Ryan Gosling episode. 2 years ago, they had Kelsey Ballerini with Travis Kelce. So, you know, it's great when they go to that well. And Bill, I thought that he was really great tonight.
Yeah, I mean, one country artist a year is fine by me. I know, John, this is one of the few things you and I disagree about, along with Jimmy Fallon. But I think that if you're going to bring somebody in this ilk, in this country genre, you got to bring somebody like Shaboozey. He's been everywhere, as you said, and you know had one of the biggest hits of the summer. So you have to kind of address that and bring him in. And as Rachel said, getting the diversity into the show is super, super important. And yeah, I mean, the audience really seemed into it more than almost everybody that's been a musical guest so far this year. So I enjoyed his performances.
Yeah, he was awesome. Great job, Shaboozey. Okay, let's go over to Weekend Update, where we're going to get a lot of jokes and stories about the shooter of the CEO in New York this week. So obviously that was the story of the week. And in some eras of the show, you know, that would have been made into a sketch or something about that would have. But, you know, we get some, you know, topical stuff with like about that on Weekend Update, some Trump jokes as well. And then we only get one set of features on Update, and that was Heidi Gardner with Marcelo, who's playing Heidi's son. Heidi's playing Mama Dookie. Marcelo is the football player Dookie, who just got famous playing for the Carolina Panthers. And, you know, a lot of jokes, mostly surrounding Heidi's character, who is very excited about the fame that her son has just achieved, discussing about how she's going to go over to Shaboozey's changing room and about to show Shaboozey her Shaboozey, and lots of stuff. Marcelo playing completely against type in this feature, where he is usually loud and over the top, but completely silent in this one. So Bill, how do you feel about Heidi and Marcelo on Update?
I mean, only people like us who are just, you know, obsessed with the show and the minutia of it, and seeing these two Weekend Update correspondent titans kind of together was really, really exciting for me. So I kind of got lost in the whole fact that they were working together. It was almost like when Adie and Bowen worked together in her last season. That you want to see this because they're both so good at the Weekend Update desk separately, individually. So to see them together, and yeah, Marcelo's performance was very understated. There were some really good lines. I love the Crazy Bread, that he's the new mascot for Crazy Bread, and he says pizza, comma pizza. But yeah, this is Heidi being Heidi in a good way to me, being this, you know, crazy Weekend Update correspondent who just is all in on her son's success, not her own success. And yeah, I like this a lot.
Rachel, how do you feel about Heidi's character and Marcelo on Update?
I love that we're getting more combos in the Weekend Update features. I think we should only have combos. I like seeing them play off of each other. I mean, in this case, Marcelo really was more of a prop in a way, but I guess we have to trust the process, as we learned from this. I felt like in many ways Heidi was playing a very typical Heidi character, and had Marcelo not been there, I might not have been into it as much, because it would have just been another exaggerated character set in a different pop culture moment. And I felt like I've seen that already. But having him there, I feel like, and having the awkward interaction gave it another beat that felt like it was something kind of new and fresh that we hadn't quite seen in a while. And I also just love that they keep breaking the walls within Weekend Update more often. Like when they panned over to Colin, that was just he was even an awkwardly framed shot. He was a little bit off center. And I think that made it a little bit more like, and it almost lasted a beat more than I wanted it to, but in a great way. Like it was just like, what's going on here? So I feel like that added another element, which I really enjoyed.
I thought Marcella was great in this. And also, you know, with Heidi, she is such a big football fan. You know, if you don't follow her, she's a huge Chiefs fan from Kansas City and goes to a lot of games. So you would expect that she would have met some of these moms. You know, obviously the Kelsey mom is the one that everyone's talking about, but, you know, even newer moms of younger football players, you know, this is somebody that she may have experienced. So it makes sense that this would come from her writing. And I thought that the stuff here was like, the writing was really, really good for this one. I felt like she did this really well. I have one little nitpicky thing, which is that at some point over the last couple of years, Heidi's switched over to only playing characters that are names, that their descriptions are the names. And I don't know, you know, it's kind of funny at certain points because it sort of telestrates what we're about to expect. But it also sort of gives us the answer to the puzzle before we get to hear the question sometimes. And that is like a little bit of a trend where Heidi, who is a really brilliant Update performer and was truly known for that early in her career, it's something I would be a little weary of if I can make a recommendation to her, which is just that, like, I don't know that I would do this every single time, because, you know, if she would have come out, if we would have had Che introduce this as, you know, newest football star Dookie and his mom, and then we got to watch that play out, I think it probably hits better than the mom whose son who just got famous. Or the mom whose son just got famous. So for me, you know, that's the only thing I'll say. Cut from this week from Weekend Update was Michael Longfellow, who played himself on Update, doing some stand-up, talking about being financially illiterate. Devin does come in at the end as Uncle Sam, who Longfellow is giving 40% of his money to and told Jost to buy that ferry. So Michael Longfellow cut from the Update desk. We'll see if that does come back in one of the next couple of months.
Sorry, I'm just going to jump in because I was really bummed to hear this was cut, because I happened to be at a stand-up show last October around tax time. And Michael did talk about how his mom was backstage because she had to fly across the country to help him with his taxes. So I would have loved to see this.
Yes, so this is definitely right up his alley. So hopefully we will get this at some point, or maybe let's get put up online. Okay, first sketch after Update is our Andrew Dismukes sketch of the week, where Andrew is going to play Mr. Landon, who is the attorney for Paul, who is dressed wearing a green fire suit and a Devo hat. Shout out a former SNL musical guest. Bowen is playing Judge Peter Lee. Ashley is the prosecutor, and Sarah is Miss Shane, the witness who is called up to testify and say who did the crime. And this was amazing because the reason that Andrew feels that he needs to put Paul in this position is because he has all of the people who are attending the trial dressed exactly the same. So we get about 20 spectators all dressed in these green fire suits and Devo hats. And then every single time that he says, point out who committed the crime, she just completely gets it right away. And then it devolves into him saying, okay, now everybody shuffle. And we get one of the stupidest thing we've seen on SNL since the Baldwin sketch, where these like 25 people are just going to stand and rock around and end up sitting back down. And we get the first ever appearance of new writer Carl Tart appearing on the show as well in this sketch. So great to me. Ultimately ends up with a plan C and a plan D, which includes Mr. Landon saying, if you don't dismiss this case, I'm going to kill myself. And then plan D is, if you dismiss this case, I will give you oral. So, Rachel, your thoughts on Andrew's sketch tonight?
This was so ridiculous that, like, I think, and I was just, I only came to know who Carl Tart's this past weekend. I went to the improv show that Kira, is that how you say her name? Kira O'Sullivan and Jimmy Fowley. I mean, it was this great group of both Chloe Trost and Chloe Feynman. And Carl was just like the standout doing improv among this group. So really getting to understand his humor and how SNL, like I don't want to call it mainstream, but his humor is just his improv humor was very straightforward SNL. Like, you know, it's not like Sarah Sherman, where it's so wild outside of the walls of the studio. So I was really impressed with him. And then to see him literally in the sketch was so fun. And I will say what lost me was the end. I actually wrote the end meh, because I didn't get, it just kind of like fell at the end. I felt like, okay, you had this great concept. You had this whole shuffle thing that was just so ridiculous. And then it kind of just went, meh. And I didn't know what to take away from it at the end. I mean, we talked so much about endings tonight, which I feel like is so, I mean, of course, I think that's been a big thing for the last couple seasons, but like, I feel like more than ever, a lot of the sketches tonight really made it or didn't make it for me based on how they ended. My favorite thing, or like a little detail that I was grateful for, was that they actually had the judge's name was Peter Lee, and I feel like they don't usually acknowledge race, and the fact that they had an ethnic name, Peter Lee, for Bowen was kind of like, oh, that was a nice little touch.
Oh, good. I'm glad to hear that. You know, I think that Andrew, the reason why we all love him on the show, and collective is that he's probably the most fearless performer we have on the cast right now. So for him, I would have dreamed to get to see him pitch this or perform this at the table, because to me, like, this is the type of stuff I love, which is just so stupid and ridiculous. And these types of things don't need full explanations, unlike some other sketches, because they're so silly. So I thought that this was great. I just wish they went even further with it, Bill, because that's the type of thing that's like, instead of him saying like, oh, well, like, I just want to get my words right. I will give you oral at the end. Like, I wish he said, okay, well, let me try this one more time, and then brought in like 100 more Devo people. Because that, to me, like, it just like literally shoved the stage with as many Devo people that have ever, like, more people on the stage than like as at fire capacity. I think like that to me is what really would have crushed this. So what do you think of it?
Yeah, the oral line is kind of where it loses me, because up until that point, it feels like Dismukes probably pitched this as, what does a child think a lawyer does? And so like every moment up until that, it's kind of like, you know, well, come on, let me do this. Look at the funny hats, look at the funny suits. No one but Dismukes could do something like this. So I wanted to love this. I couldn't, because as you both already mentioned, the ending is just blech. Yeah, I mean, they must have found those Devo hats. I want to go in that SNL storage room and go to that season 4 box and pull out those Devo hats, because that's just so great. Like, who the hell knows who Devo is now? Like, that's just such a fantastic detail for a 50-year-old show, and you know, you've got teenagers and 20-year-olds watching who don't know who Devo is. Love that. So yeah, there was a lot to like here, but not a lot to love here.
Yeah, I love the idea that he believes that a lawyer's job is to cause confusion, when that is like when a lawyer is actually supposed to just like make it clear on one side. So for me, I just wish this got even more confusing. But again, I'm not complaining, because I really felt like this gave me like my biggest laugh out loud moment of the night was watching all of the Devo people shuffling, and probably will be like one of those things that just that whole 5 seconds will be what I will send to everybody I know tomorrow, just to watch them all spin around and go sit back down. Next up, we got Spotify Wrapped, where Andrew, Sarah, Paul, and Ego are sitting around their apartment talking about the Spotify Wrapped, which, if you are on Spotify and you either listen to podcasts or listen to music, you may know that in the beginning of December, everybody gets their information about what they listen to the most, and who they, what percentage of fan you are of everybody. So first of all, thanks to everybody who sent in, anyone who listens to the SNN and sent in those lists. So those are always really humbling and awesome when we get to see them. But I didn't see on anybody's list Satoshi Gutman, who is Bowen Yang's character, who's the anti-instrumentalist out of Maryland. That Paul is in the top 0.00001%. And they all talk about him and his podcast, Awakenings, where we get to see Trisha Paytas, who is on there as well, and ends up coming into the sketch. And we ultimately learn that Spotify Wrapped is not about judging people, it's about celebrating your life. Bill, your thoughts on Spotify Wrapped?
I felt seen, and let me tell you why. Because I share my Spotify with my daughter, who completely demolishes my Spotify Wrapped every damn
What's on
year
it?
outside of the podcast, which, of course, SNN is number one with a bullet. But I've got so much Taylor Swift. But the funny thing is, she's obsessed with Five Nights at Freddy's, and there's a soundtrack to that where there's this unknown artist, and she was in the 0.001% fans of this song. And I just, as soon as they said this, I'm like, there's somebody else like this. Now, of course, this goes in a completely different direction with Satoshi, and I think Bowen plays this really well. Yeah, there wasn't a lot here. This felt like an end of night sketch that kind of fell flat as it went further in. But there were some decent performances here, but mostly did not work after I had my moment of clarity.
Rachel, what do you think?
They had to do something Spotify Wrapped. I mean, that was the pop culture viral moment of the week. I don't know if it needed to be a sketch. I think it could have been a feature update. I don't feel like it. I mean, they buried in all the little things we wanted to hear about what percent you are, all the little things we know. So it was fun to feel that we all are sharing that. And I feel like the story out there this week was that so many people didn't reflect them. So I think that also was part of it. I'm unaware of Trisha Paytas, so that was lost on me. I actually was like, I thought it was another viral star, and I was like, oops. So I do like that it kind of came back to kind of a sharing the soundtrack of your life. I mean, I do like that it kind of brought us back to that message about what it's really about, but I could have done without this.
I didn't hate this, actually. I thought that there was this was fine for me. It was better than some of the other stuff that I've seen that's similar to it in the last couple of years. First of all, Trisha Paytas being on the show, very exciting to have a YouTuber be considered a celebrity cameo on the show now. So it's just really, it's again, another example of the show, audience and what they're thinking about for the future of the show, which is the online audience and it being important to them. So, her being there, I think is very exciting for a lot of people. Now, the sketch itself was interesting because I do think doing something on Spotify Wrapped is original that we haven't seen on the show before. And someone having a very niche Spotify Wrapped, like Bill said, is a great place to mine comedy from. I think that the only problem I have with the sketch concept is that the sketch should have been about Paul and not about Bowen. I think that once the sketch became about Bowen's character being sort of like why it would be weird to follow them, it devolves into sort of like this showcasey piece. But the idea that Paul could like somebody who's like a little bit off brand or different or weird to me is a good place to go. And I feel like they were getting there a little bit, especially with some of the lines that Paul was saying at the end and Andrew and Sarah and Ego's reaction to it. It was the Bowen stuff for me that I don't think fully clicked. So but yeah, interesting concept here. And I'm glad like we got the podcast sketch in the Charlie episode, the Spotify Wrapped here. Like it is like, this is really the future of the show, is like covering new sketch styles and concepts that they're going to be talking about for years to come.
How many weeks till SNN is mentioned on SNL, John?
I will not make a bet on that. The other people can do that. All right, let's talk about I was like, honestly, huge props to the SNL production team that they got this next sketch in under time, because I was very confident that we were not getting anything else in the show. But in comes a complete unknown red carpet where we're going to see Heidi as Lacey Shea from BuzzFeed interviewing Chloe Fineman, James Austin Johnson, and Andrew Dismukes and Paul, who are going to come in playing Timothy Chalamet, Bob Dylan, Bruce Springsteen, and Bono. And, you know, typical red carpet nowadays. So did you have a Brad Summer? Did you have a Brad Summer? And in between all of the questions, we get some really fun portrayals, and especially James's Bob Dylan, who I know like a lot of people knew that he could do, and he's been trying to get on the show for a while. The first official Bob Dylan portrayal since Dana Carvey did it in 1991. So pretty exciting to get that one on here. Always fun to get a Bruce parody as well. So Rachel, how did you feel about the complete unknown red carpet?
I was surprised that this aired because it was actually, I wish it had a little bit, I mean, that was stuck at that. This isn't even 10 to 1. This seems like it's almost like tacked on to the end. I actually thought it was pretty lovely to see the impressions. There was some great writing in here. I feel like my favorite part was Frank Rory Gilmore's boyfriends. I just thought that was such a BuzzFeed question, and like the way they executed it was perfect, and that made for a perfect. That was the button, right? That was the very, very end of it. I think that they're actually, I thought when JJ first stepped out, I actually didn't recognize who that was. I thought it was a cameo because he was so in his mentality that it took me a second to realize that was him. And I mean, yes, we've seen Chloe do Chalamet, but I know we've seen it a lot in a lot of context, but I still enjoy it. I feel like she just really nails it. Also, they happened to film a complete unknown right outside my door in my hometown. So I love that it's already getting so much press before it's even really come out.
Bill, your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I'm just kind of like, I thought this when Baldwin was on a few weeks ago and Jaj was doing his Trump. It's so strange to think that Dana's in the building and here's Jaj doing his Dylan. And they're so different, such different takes. Obviously, 30 some years has passed. So, the Dylan impression, just like Biden or Trump, is going to be different because they're in different stages of their lives. So I was kind of obsessed with that part of it. Not a whole lot going on here, but I am impressed, as you guys are, that they did get it in. My one laugh was really that these, superstars, these billionaires, musicians were obsessed with the hot bar, and they just couldn't stop talking about the different foods that were at the hot bar that they wanted to get to instead of talking about silly stuff. And then, of course, the button with rank Rory Gilmore's boyfriends from the Gilmore Girls, and they all have an answer right off the top of the bat. So yeah, it was okay for the way to end the night, but not a whole lot of meat on this bone.
Yeah, I'm not saying as Bob Dylan, but you have one of the greatest impressionists in the history of the show in the building. You got to get Dana Carvey in this sketch at some point, because it was such a great vehicle where we've seen like so many sketches of, the auditions and all that stuff. But this was a really great way to get impressions onto the show through the red carpet. And I've done red carpets as reporters before, and I know exactly what it is like to have to ask certain questions that you may not care about, or that the person you're interviewing may not care about. And then they just go off on a tangent and you're just standing there. And Rachel, I'm sure like, you know this better than me, but like the whole idea, like to me, I actually thought Heidi was great in this one. Heidi being just consistently asking questions that would like any teen pop magazine would be asking these people, and then the impressionists could not care less and are just doing their classic lines or Bruce Springsteen stuff. Like to me, these are people that like Bruce Springsteen and Bono and Bob Dylan have no idea what Brat is. I mean, we didn't even know what Brat was until last week, so how would they know? So Rachel, it's for you, this must have hit home in a way.
Yeah, I mean, having been in teen magazines for a decade, very much so. I definitely have done my fair share of red carpets and had to ask those embarrassing questions. And it was a different day and age where I feel like these days, bigger names do sillier things. And I'm always surprised, like, especially like, just as an example, I've gone down gone down the rabbit hole of Hugh Grant interviews recently, and I'm surprised the range of I'm also surprised he's never hosted SNL. But I'm surprised the range of silly things that he's been made to do on this press tour. So I do feel like the fact that a Bob Dylan and a Springsteen would be asked these questions is so realistic. But the minutia of the Just Logan Dean was just so, it was so BuzzFeed and it was so red carpet. It just mixed so much into one joke. And I think that's what made that fun. And it really made me wonder, because I don't think that's the correct order. I think it should be Logan. I don't want to commit myself yet.
Okay, well, let's rate our first December show out of 10. Bill, Rachel, while you think of how you would like to rate this, chat, we invite you to put your numbers in there. I will tell you all what was cut from this night. So first up, we got the SNL cartoon about New York that I mentioned from the Bill Burr show, also cut from the show tonight. So that may get on at some point, but we were 0 for 2 so far getting that to the air show. We also had 3 other live sketches that were cut. First was Women Are Queens. Heidi can't get in a word edgewise on a talk show with Paul Keenan, Bowen, and James as the panel, and Marcelo as Ruth Bader Spinsberg, as well as Mikey. Very committed performance from Paul, his best of the night, apparently, according to this dress report. We also have Americans at an Irish pub. This is what Americans think going to an Irish pub is like. Paul is the bartender. Dismukes and Ashley playing the Americans. Chloe, James, Heidi, Mikey, Irish people. Someone breaks through a window to look for someone with Dismukes' last name, since he's a quarter Irish, and they find the woman Heidi. Also a very strong performance from Paul. Superman is the third sketch. Lois Lane's roommate, played by Chloe, interrupts a rooftop convo between Superman, played by Paul, and Lois Lane, played by Sarah. Mikey hopped in as a villain. And the sketch includes Chloe not knowing how to pronounce Superman. So 3 sketches: Women Are Queens, Americans at an Irish pub, and Superman, as well as the film cartoon New York. We also had Michael Longfellow cut from the Weekend Update desk. All right, Bill Kenney, how are you going to rate this episode?
I think I'm going to go 7 out of 10, based on the cold open, especially. But Paul was a lot better than I expected he would be, although he kind of was in that Keaton mold of not having him front and center as much. But I think he did a really good job, and I'm looking really forward to the next 2 weeks. So I think we're on a good start here.
Rachel?
I was going to go 5, but I'm going to upgrade to a 6 because I did really love the 2 pre-tapes. I felt like it was a middle of the road episode, and I just don't know if it's going to be one that we talk about much going forward. There will be a few moments, a few lines, obviously Church Lady, but I feel like I'm going to stick with my 6.
I feel like tonight was like a 7 for me. I'm agreeing with Bill. I think that there was a lot of things that really worked well. I thought the vibes were really strong tonight. Paul was an excellent host. I don't know that he took anything and made it like a classic, but I felt like he took some tepid material and made it very good. The performers were all really good tonight. It felt refreshing, and that cold open, getting Church Lady, having that sketch there, made this night so much more iconic and memorable. So for me, I'm feeling pretty good at a 7 out of 10, and I'm hoping that we'll continue to boost that up as we head into Chris Rock next week and Marty Short the week after. So very exciting stuff we have here in December. So let's talk about what's happening here over at the Saturday Night Network. Obviously, we will have full coverage of this episode, Paul Mescal and Shaboozey, including our roundtable on Monday night, where we will break this down even further, talk about the best sketches from the night. We will also have our By the Number show happening on Wednesday night, where Mike will be back to talk through all the numbers and statistics from the week. In case you missed what we did in our off weeks, we had our feedback show where we talked about all of the episodes from November. We had an interview with Punky Johnson that came out last Monday. We spoke to Punky for about an hour and a half about her entire career at Saturday Night Live. Some really fun stories. Her appearance at the Good Nights for the Charlie XCX episode. So in case you missed that one, that was a great episode of SNL Stories. I love Punky so much. I'm so happy that she gave us all that time. So thanks to her. We also had the premiere of Everything You Need to Know About SNL Season 18 that is out now on the YouTube channel. So if in case you missed that one and you've been following that series, that is out and available to all of you. And we'll have Season 19 coming up very soon as well. We will also have our show exclusively for patrons out next Thursday, where we will break down one of these sketches that you want us to even further. To vote on that, you join us at patreon.com/the SNL Network. And then we will have that show exclusively for you on Patreon. And of course, we will be back here next Saturday night to talk through everything from Chris Rock, and Paul Mescal's girlfriend, Gracie Abrams, is doing the music next week. So that'll be really exciting to talk about as well. Bill Kenney, thanks so much for joining us tonight. So happy to have you. Wasn't it special?
It was very special, and there was no Satan in the building. Yeah, I mean, going back to Chris Rock, I love that. You know, that's where we started all those years ago, John. Having him host the episode to premiere season 46. So happy to have him back. And you and James, let me throw out a compliment to you guys. Great interview with Punky. When I was on the last time with Mike, we talked about who we'd want to have dinner with from SNL. I want to have a beer with Punky. Like, I think she's top of the list with people I would want to see from SNL and just sit at a bar and talk to. She was so charming and such a great interview from you guys. You can follow me on most of the social medias at BKLove73.
Thank you so much, Bill. Really appreciate that. Rachel, thanks so much for joining us tonight. Please tell the listeners where they can check out all the wonderful things you have going on.
Of course. Well, first, I was about to say the same thing, and I love that Bill just plugged the Punky interview because I listened to it last night. I was stuck in terrible traffic, so thank you for getting me home safely. But such a fascinating interview. So many insights just on the interactions behind the scenes. I was just blown away by everything that she said, and her personality just comes through even through listening to her. I mean, even when we're exiting the state, the studio, she's just always standing there, like saying hello. Like, she just has that personality, and I feel like the fact that she was so open about everything was so fascinating. Just so many interesting things. I can't stop saying the word fascinating. But the other thing I wanted to mention, because you mentioned the Superman sketch, and I wasn't at the I wasn't at the dress rehearsal tonight, but that was actually at the Mulaney. I was at Mulaney, and so that Superman cut was actually, I don't think all the parts were the same, but the premise of the rooftop with Superman was from that, was a cut. So it means it was cut a second time. And as for me, I am on socials as Rachel S. Chang on Instagram and Rachel Chang on X.
Thank you for the extra insight. That was fascinating, and for the kind compliments about the Punky interview. Love her so much. So glad that you both enjoyed that interview. To never miss anything we have going on here, please follow us at the SNL Network on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and X. Give us a thumbs up on the YouTube video if you enjoyed watching this one, or leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you're listening to this throughout the week. You can also subscribe to the podcast on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, any podcatcher you check us out on. I want to thank latenighter.com for being our presenting partner for the show tonight. And thanks to everybody in the chat for staying up late with us and talking through this amazing episode of Saturday Night Live. Thanks to Bill and Rachel for joining me on the show. My name is Jon Schneider from the Saturday Night Network, and we will see you next time, everybody. Have a good one.